I gave my daughter a flower shop so she could recover after her husband's death. But when I came for flowers, she was sobbing. Her mother-in-law had seized the shop, forced her to do the dirtiest work for free, and mocked her. I couldn't stand by. These thieves didn't know who they were messing with. Their betrayal will get a harsh payback, and they'll regret every minute. The bell chimed as I walked into Elena's Blooms on a Thursday afternoon in August. Something felt wrong immediately. Behind the counter sat a blonde woman I'd never seen, mid-30s, wearing an expensive cream blazer. She scrolled through her phone with French manicured nails, barely glancing up. "Can I help you?" Her tone suggested she'd rather not. "I need arrangements for the Pearl District charity auction, around $2,300 worth." "Where's Elena?" She straightened, reassessing me. Older man, polo shirt, running shoes, not her ideal clientele. "I'm the manager here, Grace Harper. Elena is occupied with other duties. I can help you." "Manager?" "I'd given this shop to my daughter Elena 8 months ago after her husband David died in that accident last December. She was supposed to be the owner. I'd prefer to speak with Elena. It's somewhat detailed. As I said, I'm perfectly capable." "Dad." The voice from the back room was barely a whisper. Grace's jaw tightened. "Elena, a customer for you." My daughter emerged, and my chest constricted. Elena had always been slender, but now she looked gaunt, bones visible through thin wrists. Dark circles shadowed her red-rimmed eyes. A stained apron covered old jeans and a faded t-shirt. Her hair hung in a messy ponytail, and she clutched pruning shears in green-stained hands. "Hi, I didn't know you were coming." She wouldn't meet my eyes. This wasn't grief. I'd seen her grieving after David's death. Seen her at her lowest. This was different. This was fear. She flinched when Grace shifted position. "Just ordering arrangements for the September auction. Nothing too complicated. Of course, we can work something out." Her voice was mechanical, lifeless. She moved toward the counter, and I saw it, a dark bruise on her left wrist. Purple-yellow against pale skin. She caught me noticing and jerked her arm back. "Actually, I will handle the financial aspects," Grace interrupted. "Elena, shouldn't you finish those rose stems? The Hartley wedding ships by 3. A command, not a suggestion." Elena's shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. "Yes, of course. I should get back to, wait, Elena, are you? The work staff needs to stay on schedule." Grace's smile was sharp. "I'm sure you understand, Mr. Thompson." George Thompson, Elena's father. For a heartbeat, Grace's mask slipped. Her eyes widened. Then she recovered with a laugh like breaking glass. "Of course, Elena mentioned you." "I'm so sorry." She touched Elena's shoulder. My daughter tensed like she'd been shocked. "Your father's here with a big order. Isn't that wonderful?" "Wonderful," Elena whispered, hollow. I spent 10 minutes going through motions, flower types, colors, delivery. Grace did most of the talking, quoting inflated prices. Elena stood silently, occasionally nodding when prompted. When I wrote the check for $2,300, Grace snatched it before Elena could reach for it. "We'll have everything ready. Elena does beautiful work when she focuses." The implied criticism made my hands curl into fists. "I'm sure she does." I taught her everything about this business. I left and drove to the coffee shop 2 blocks away. Something gnawed at me. 40 years as a certified public accountant had taught me to recognize patterns, to spot when numbers didn't add up. Nothing about what I'd witnessed added up. An hour later, I walked back, approaching from the side where I could see through the large front window. What I saw made my blood turn cold. A woman in her 60s stood center shop, finger jabbing toward Elena's face. Authority, control, dominance radiated from her posture. Elena's head was bowed, shoulders shaking, crying. In the corner, a thin man around 40 sat at the computer, clicking through bank statements, ignoring the scene. The older woman, Margaret, David's mother, was yelling. I couldn't hear through the glass, but Elena shrank with each gesture. I'd given my daughter this shop to heal, signed over the deed, transferred ownership, made everything legally hers. I'd wanted to give her purpose, independence, a fresh start. Instead, I was watching her destroyed in her own business. The man at the computer, Liam, David's brother, looked up briefly, smirked at something Margaret said, then returned to the screen, counting money, tallying profits that belonged to my daughter. I stepped back before anyone noticed. My hands shook, but not from fear. From rage. Cold, calculated rage I'd learned to channel over decades, uncovering fraud, exposing people who thought they were untouchable. 40 years finding discrepancies in corporate ledgers, tracking money trails through shell companies, documenting evidence for court. I'd helped bring down executives who'd embezzled millions. I'd prosecuted fraud schemes spanning multiple states. Now I would use every skill I'd acquired to dismantle whatever was happening in that flower shop. Nobody exploits my daughter's grief and walks away. I waited in my car outside the service entrance until 9 p.m. The front door opened. Margaret, Liam, and Grace emerged laughing, climbing into a silver Lexus that looked new, $35,000 to $40,000 easily. They drove away. 5 minutes later, Elena exited through the back, locking up. She moved slowly, exhausted. Elena. She spun, keys clutched like a weapon. Dad, you can't be here. Get in. She hesitated, glanced around nervously, then climbed in. I drove, putting distance between us and the shop. Tell me what's happening. Nothing. Everything's fine. Don't, I saw her yelling at you. I saw the bruise. I saw Grace treat you like hired help in your own business. She broke. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook her body. I pulled into a parking lot and waited. After David died, I couldn't function. Her voice was raw. Margaret showed up in January. Said she wanted to help. She stayed when you gave me the shop and house in February. Said I shouldn't make big decisions while grieving. I remembered that February morning signing over the deed to the house on Quimby Street, 2,400 square feet, $685,000. Transferring the business registration. I'd wanted to give her security. She was at David's funeral, I said carefully. She seemed devastated. She was, but then she convinced me to sign a power of attorney. February 18th, just in case I had a breakdown, couldn't handle things. It sounded reasonable. She brought a notary to the house. 2 days after I'd given her the shop, the timeline clicked with sickening clarity. At first, small things. She'd suggest changes, help with vendors. Then March, she said I needed partners who understood commerce. Brought in Liam and Grace, and you agreed? She presented it as decided. They moved into the house. It's David's family. I couldn't refuse. By April, Margaret made all decisions. May, they changed the locks on the office with financial records. By June, her voice cracked. By June, I was an employee. They pay me nothing. 12-hour days while Grace sits at the counter and Liam manages finances, transferring money for personal use. When I objected, Margaret said I'd signed paperwork, that legally she had the right. I thought about that finger jabbing at her face, the bruise. Liam grabbed me yesterday when I asked to see bank statements. Said I needed to understand my place. Something in my chest went ice cold. Not hot anger. Absolute zero fury that crystallizes thinking into perfect clarity. They live in your house. All three. Master bedroom redecorated, the living room. Expensive restaurants every night, $200 to $400 per meal. Margaret bought that Lexus last month, $38,500. Everything from the shop account. The shop's location meant steady weddings and events. Well run, it could generate $8,000 or $9,000 monthly. How much does it make? They won't show me books. Before they took over, we averaged $8,400 monthly net profit. $8,400 times 6 months, over $50,000 burned through on restaurants, cars, clothes. While my daughter worked unpaid in her own business. I looked at her, 15 pounds lost, raw hands defeated. I remembered giving her the shop that cold February morning. I know it seems impossible, I'd said, but you'll fill this place with something beautiful. Build something that's yours. She'd cried then too, but with hope. I'm going to call it Elena's Blooms after Mom. My late wife had loved flowers. This shop was passing on a legacy. Now vultures were stripping it away. When Margaret said to go to court, what exactly did she say? Elena whispered, repeating words burned into memory. She said, you signed the documents. Legally, I have the right to manage your business. If you don't like it, take me to court. But you don't have money for a lawyer. Everything goes through me now. Silence stretched. Then I spoke quietly. The flowers for the auction, I don't actually need them. Elena looked confused. What I need are all the documents you signed. Every paper Margaret had you sign. Can you get them? Maybe. Margaret keeps them in the office filing cabinet. Get them. Photograph every page with your phone. Send them to me. She nodded slowly. Something flickered in her eyes. Not quite hope, but not complete despair. What are you going to do? I thought about 40 years tracking money, building cases, finding weak points in fraudulent schemes. People who'd underestimated a quiet auditor in reading glasses. I'm getting your business back, your house back, and Margaret, Liam, and Grace will understand that stealing from my daughter was their biggest mistake. But the power of attorney can be revoked. Oregon law says you can revoke any time if you're mentally competent. And you are depressed, exhausted, exploited, yes, but competent. I looked at her directly. For 14 days, go to work and pretend nothing changed. Let them think they've won. Can you do that? She wiped her eyes. I saw a flash of the strong woman she'd been. Yes, I can do that. Good, because in 14 days I'm taking you out, and Margaret Harper will learn you don't steal from George Thompson's daughter and walk away clean. I dropped her at her car and watched her drive to the house that should have been sanctuary. Then I sat, engine running, thinking they'd made a fundamental error, assumed a retired old man would be easy to deceive. That family obligation would keep Elena compliant. That paperwork equals power. For decades in corporate auditing taught me one truth. Paperwork can be created and paperwork can be destroyed. People who rely too heavily on a single document haven't thought about what happens when that document becomes worthless. I pulled out my phone and started a list: private investigator, business attorney, notary, perhaps a call to an old colleague at the IRS. Margaret Harper thought she'd won, thought she'd secured comfortable retirement by exploiting a grieving widow. She had no idea the war hadn't even started. Friday morning, I sat in my garage workshop, sandpaper gliding across a wooden planter box. My phone buzzed. Photos from Elena, power of attorney documents, all dated February 18th, 2 days after I'd given her the shop. Margaret hadn't wasted time. I made the first call. Quinton Brooks, private investigator, Brooks Investigations. Mr. Brooks, I need surveillance on 3 individuals and financial background checks. Discreet and thorough. What's the situation? My daughter owns a flower shop in Pearl District. 3 people took control using a power of attorney. I need documentation of how they're spending her money. Business fraud, 1,500 initial plus 200 daily for surveillance. About a week to build a solid case, $3,500. Worth it. When can you start? This afternoon. I gave him everything: names, addresses, the Lexus plate, shop and house locations. I also need their financial vulnerabilities, credit debt, liens, anything showing desperation. Public records. You'll have preliminary results tonight. Next, Elizabeth Morgan, the notary who'd witnessed Elena's signature. Downtown, 3rd floor. Mr. Thompson, how can I help? I showed her the power of attorney photos. You notarized this February 18th. Do you remember? She studied it through reading glasses. Yes. The young woman seemed very distressed, crying intermittently. The older woman kept reassuring her it was just a precaution. Did my daughter appear to understand what she was signing? Legally, I verify identity and mental competence. She was grieving, but I couldn't refuse based on emotional state. However, she paused. I noted in my records that she seemed uncertain about the terms. That's unusual. Would you provide a statement if subpoenaed or if your daughter requests it directly? Leverage, everything was leverage. My phone rang, Quinton already. Public records show Liam Harper has a judgment against him, $23,000 in credit card debt. Collection agency filed suit 3 months ago. $23,000, that explained the desperation. What about Grace? Surveillance starts now. We'll document everywhere they go, everything they buy. Call me tonight. Final stop, Alan Foster's law office. Downtown Modern, sharp-eyed attorney, 52, business and property law specialist. Mr. Thompson, power of attorney dispute. I laid out everything. He read methodically. The document's legally valid, he said finally, but revocable anytime by your daughter, assuming mental competence. She's competent, traumatized and exploited, but competent. Then we revoke it. However, that won't recover money already spent. For that, we prove breach of fiduciary duty. Anyone holding power of attorney must act in the principal's best interest, keep accurate records, provide accounting when requested. If they haven't, his smile was thin, they're personally liable for all financial losses. We sue to recover every dollar misappropriated. How do we prove it? Financial records, bank statements, documentation showing business funds used for personal expenses. I'm working on that. Once you have proof, we demand full accounting. If they refuse or provide fraudulent information, it strengthens our case. We can also file complaints with Oregon Department of Revenue for misreported expenses. Timeline: revocation happens immediately once your daughter signs. Recovery takes months if contested, but we can make their lives very uncomfortable. Meanwhile, good. Start preparing documents. He nodded. If they've damaged her property, the house, document everything. Photos, professional assessments, additional damages we can claim. That evening, Quinton called with surveillance results. Your instincts were right. Margaret and Liam lunch at Clyde Common, $237. Grace shopping at Pioneer Place, spent $4,200 at Michael Kors, business account card, $4,200 on handbags while Elena worked unpaid. Keep watching. Document everything. Also, the Lexus purchased July 15, $38,500 financed through the shop's business credit line. 0 down. They'd leveraged Elena's business credit, breathtaking arrogance. I sat in my workshop that night, watching evening light fade. The planter box sat half-finished. Tomorrow I'd complete it. Sand it smooth. Make it perfect. The same way I was perfecting my approach. They'd mistaken legal authority for invulnerability. Thought a piece of paper made them untouchable. But legal authority only works when the other side doesn't know the rules better, and I'd spent 4 decades learning every loophole, every requirement, every way to turn confidence into downfall. Margaret Harper wanted to play games with paperwork. Let's see how she likes it when someone who actually understands the game starts playing back. Saturday morning, Vernon Hill returned my call. We'd worked together 15 years ago. He was IRS then, now a private tax consultant. George Thompson, what's this about? I explained the situation, not as a father, but as someone who discovered potential tax fraud. Running personal expenses through business accounts. His voice sharpened. Textbook fraud. The IRS loves these cases. Can I file anonymously? You report as a concerned party. Oregon Department of Revenue handles state taxes, coordinates with IRS. Provide documentation. They'll investigate. What documentation? Bank statements showing questionable transactions, photos of personal purchases, anything proving they're claiming personal expenses as business deductions. If they can't provide proper records, Vernon laughed. Penalties, back taxes, possible criminal charges. At minimum, an audit that'll cost them more in fees than they stole. Perfect. I'll send you what I have. Make sure your documentation's solid. The state doesn't like wild goose chases. Trust me, it'll be solid. Quinton's reports came daily. Sunday, Lou Pond dinner, $342. Monday, Grace at Day Spa, $620. Tuesday, Liam at Sports Bar, repeatedly using the business card. Every transaction photographed and documented. By Wednesday, I had everything needed. I spent that evening organizing evidence. Bank statements Elena photographed when Liam left the office unlocked, Quinton surveillance photos, timeline showing systematic takeover. The patterns were obvious, personal expenses disguised as business costs. No proper accounting, no separation between personal and business finances. Amateur hour embezzlement I'd seen 100 times, the kind almost insultingly easy to prosecute. I drafted the Oregon Department of Revenue complaint carefully, no emotion, just facts. Business name, owner information, suspected violations, attached documentation, submitted anonymously online. Friday morning, 5 days later, Elena texted, "Inspector at shop," Margaret panicking. I allowed myself a smile. First domino fallen. That evening, Elena called with something new in her voice, not hope exactly but close. Inspector said they need corrected records within 30 days or face $15,000 penalty. Margaret is losing it, blaming me for messing up bookkeeping. What did you say? Nothing, like you told me. But Dad, they're scared, really scared. Good. Let them be scared. Don't react. Don't defend. Just watch and remember. I sat in my workshop after, running my hand over the finished planter box. Smooth, solid, perfect. Tomorrow I deliver it to Elena, a gift from father to daughter. Something beautiful made with care. The Harpers would see a simple gesture. They had no idea it represented something else. Patience, precision, satisfaction of work done right. Alan Foster called Monday. Revocation documents ready. When your daughter signs, we execute immediately and notify all parties. Bank, business partners, everyone relying on Margaret's authority. How quickly does it take effect? The moment your daughter signs and we notify everyone, Margaret's authority ends. Can't access accounts, make decisions, nothing. The money already taken, that's where it gets interesting. After revoking, we demand full accounting of all transactions. Oregon law requires fiduciaries to maintain detailed records and provide them on request. If she can't or won't, we file suit for breach of fiduciary duty. If records are fraudulent, even better, fraud is fraud. Whether in original transactions or attempted cover-up. I thought about Liam's inevitable pathetic Excel spreadsheet. They'll make mistakes, they usually do. People clever enough to steal rarely think they'll need to defend themselves in court, so they get sloppy. When do we execute revocation? Whenever you're ready. But I'd suggest timing for maximum impact. If they're stressed about the tax audit, hitting them with sudden authority loss multiplies pressure. I considered this. The art of pressure wasn't just applying it was applying it at precisely the right moment, in sequence, so each blow landed before they'd recovered from the last. One more week. I want them panicked about taxes before we pull the rug completely. Alan's voice carried approval. You've done this before. Different context, same principles. That week I watched the Harpers scramble. Quentin's reports showed arguments outside the shop. Grace crying in her car. Expensive restaurants stopped. Spending slowed to a trickle. Pressure was working. Thursday evening, I delivered the planter box to Elena at closing. She ran fingers over smooth wood, tears in her eyes. It's beautiful, for the front window. Something I made for you. She looked at me with understanding. This wasn't just a planter box, it was a promise, a reminder that her father built things carefully, patiently, with attention to detail, and that I was building something now. 2 more weeks, I said quietly. Can you hold on? Yes. Her voice was stronger. Yes, I can. I drove home as sunset painted the sky orange and pink. My phone buzzed, another report from Quentin. More documentation, more evidence, more nails in the coffin I was building. The Harpers thought they'd secured their future exploiting a grieving woman. They'd gotten comfortable in their theft, confident in their control. They had no idea everything they'd built was about to collapse, and I was going to enjoy watching every moment of it. September 8th, Alan Foster's office. He slid a document across his desk. This is a formal request for financial accounting. Under Oregon law, anyone holding power of attorney has fiduciary duties. They must provide full accounting when the principal requests it. I read through the letter, professional, clinical, devastating. It demanded complete financial reports of all transactions under Margaret's authority for 6 months, every dollar in, every dollar out. What if she ignores it? First letter is a request. If ignored, the second warns of legal consequences, breach of fiduciary duty, potential lawsuit, revocation of the power of attorney. Alan tapped the document. Most people panic at the second. If she fakes the records, his smile was razor thin, then she's committed fraud on top of breach of duty. I signed authorization. Send it by courier, I want proof of delivery. The letter arrived that afternoon. Quentin's associate caught it on camera, Margaret signing for it, opening it at the counter, then crumpling it and throwing it in the trash. Predictable. 7 days later, September 15th, the second letter arrived, thicker, more official. Quentin sent surveillance video. Margaret went pale reading it. She called Liam over, jabbing her finger at the paper. He shook his head, hands gesturing wildly. That evening, Elena called. They're freaking out. Margaret says the letter is illegal harassment. Liam's been locked in the office for hours. Let them panic, don't react. Dad, this is really working, isn't it? Exactly as planned. 3 days later, September 18th, Liam's financial report arrived. I spread the pages across my kitchen table and laughed out loud. Amateur hour, a basic Excel spreadsheet with categories like business expenses and operational costs. 4,200 listed as marketing materials on the date Quentin photographed Grace buying Michael Kors handbags. 342 for client entertainment when they ate at Lupin. The Lexus buried under transportation assets. Every personal expense categorized as business costs. No receipts, no logic. Monthly totals didn't match bank statements. I called Alan. I have their financial report, it's a joke. Send it over, this is exactly what we need. Quentin delivered his latest findings at a coffee shop. He slid a folder across the table. Liam's in worse shape than we thought, $23,000 judgment, collection agencies threatening wage garnishment. 3 maxed credit cards, total debt around $37,000. Court date October 22nd. I opened the folder, bank records, credit reports, court filings, all public, all legal. And Grace financing her lifestyle entirely through the shop, past week alone, $6,200 on personal purchases, all on the business card. He pulled out another document, Lexus payment due October 1st, $1,400. If they can't access the account, they can't pay. The pieces fell into place with mathematical precision. The Harpers weren't just greedy, they were desperate. They'd built their lifestyle on Elena's money, and now the foundation was cracking. Keep watching, I want to know when they realize they're trapped. That weekend, I finished another planter box in my garage.
My phone buzzed. Alan.
I've reviewed Liam's report, textbook fraud. I can tear this apart in 5 minutes in front of a judge. Next move, we demand a meeting to discuss discrepancies. When they can't explain, we revoke the power of attorney. But George, he paused, this report is so bad it's a gift. They've handed us everything to prove breach of fiduciary duty and possibly embezzlement. How long until we act? 1 more week, let them think they've satisfied the requirement.
Then we strike. That week crawled.
Quinton's reports showed the Harpers returning to lavish spending, more dinners, more shopping. They thought they'd dodged the bullet. The bullet was still in the chamber. September 25th, I picked up Elena after closing. She looked tired but determined.
Are you ready? She nodded.
What do I need to do? Tomorrow, Alan's office, you sign 1 document. Then we watch their world collapse. She stared out at Portland lights. I'm scared. What if they fight back? They will, that's when we hit them again harder. We have law, evidence, truth. They have lies and stolen money. This isn't a fair fight, it's a slaughter. Her smile was small but genuine. When did you become so ruthless? I'm not ruthless, I'm just very, very patient, and I've made absolutely sure that when we move, they have nowhere to run. I dropped her at her apartment. In my garage, the finished planter boxes sat in a neat row, 5 of them now, each representing a week of planning, a week of watching the Harpers dig themselves deeper. Tomorrow we'd start filling those holes with cement. Alan Foster's office, 9 a.m. Elena signed the revocation of power of attorney, pen moving smoothly. Her signature dated, witnesses, Margaret Harper's legal authority evaporated. I'll file this morning, Alan said. Certified copies go to the bank, all vendors, Oregon Department of Revenue, and Margaret. By noon, her access to your accounts terminates. Elena looked at me, something fierce had awakened. How long until they know? Margaret will try to access the account this afternoon, that's when the bank tells her. We drove to the shop, I'd hired security. Marcus, former military, 6'3", the kind of presence that makes people think twice. He was already stationed outside. 3 people will show up angry, I told him, don't let them near Elena. Elena unlocked her shop, for the first time in months, she walked through as actual owner. We changed the office locks, she changed all passwords. Feels strange, she said quietly, like I'm taking back something that was always mine. You didn't forget, they made you forget. Now you're remembering.
3 p.m., Elena called.
The bank just called Margaret, I heard her screaming. She's calling me now. Don't answer. 5 minutes later, forwarded voicemail, Elena, what have you done? The bank says I can't access the account. This is illegal, you signed documents.
Call me right now.
The panic in her voice was delicious. 20 minutes later, Quinton sent video, the Harpers' car pulling up. All 3 piling out, Margaret red-faced, Liam murderous, Grace crying. They rushed the door. Marcus stepped in front, I couldn't hear the exchange, but body language told the story. Margaret jabbing her finger, Marcus shaking his head. Liam trying to push past, Marcus's palm flat against his chest, stopping him cold. Alan Foster stepped from his car, timing perfect. He walked up carrying a leather folder, expression professionally neutral. I arrived as they moved inside, Marcus had let them in under supervision. They stood in the middle of the flower shop like invaders. Margaret saw me first, eyes wide then narrow. You put her up to this. I simply explained to my daughter that she has rights. Alan opened his folder. Mrs. Harper, as of 9 a.m., the power of attorney has been formally revoked. Under Oregon law, the principal has absolute right to revoke such authorization. The revocation is legal and final. Margaret's face went red to white to blotchy purple. This is illegal, I have rights, we have a contract. You had a power of attorney, which is conditional authorization that can be revoked at will, it has been revoked. Alan's voice never changed pitch. You no longer have any authority over Ms. Thompson's business or finances.
Liam stepped forward, hands clenched, jaw tight.
You can't just kick us out. You were managing under authority that no longer exists, Alan said. As of now, you're trespassing. Miss Thompson is offering courtesy of leaving voluntarily. If you refuse, she'll call police. Grace's voice came out shrill. This is insane, we gave up everything to help her. I couldn't help myself. From what I've seen, Elena did the work while you 3 spent the profits. You abandoned Elena. Margaret's voice shook. You gave her this shop and disappeared, we were here. I gave her this shop and house as gifts, not payment for your services. You exploited her grief, manipulated her, then stole for 6 months. That ends today.
Elena stepped forward.
You need to leave now. Margaret's face crumpled with rage. We'll sue, we'll take everything. Actually, Alan said, opening another page, you should be more concerned about this formal demand for financial accounting. We've reviewed Mr. Harper's report. It's inadequate and contains fraudulent categorizations. Under Oregon law, you have 45 days to provide accurate accounting and return misappropriated funds, or we file civil lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty. Liam's face went gray, actual gray, like blood drained out. His mouth opened, closed, eyes darting to Margaret, to Alan, to me.
How much?
Preliminary estimates suggest approximately $47,300 in unauthorized personal expenditures, Alan said. Grace made a sound like a wounded animal.
47,000?
That's not. You bought a Lexus on the business credit line, I said. 38,500. Michael Kors handbags, fancy dinners, spa treatments. Adds up fast. Margaret looked at me. I'd seen that look in corporate boardrooms from executives who just realized their scheme was discovered. Pure calculation trying to find an angle. She found nothing. We'll fight this, she said, voice uncertain now. We have 6 months of bank records, surveillance photos, and your son's fraudulent financial report. We have everything.
I glanced at Alan.
How did he categorize the Lexus again?
Transportation assets.
Liam's hands shook. He shoved them in pockets.
Mom, we should go right now.
Listen to your son, I said. Leave voluntarily, because if Marcus escorts you out, things get really unpleasant. Margaret drew herself up.
This isn't over.
I watched her eyes, the panic underneath bravado.
She knew they left.
Margaret first, shoulders rigid, Liam gray-faced, Grace crying openly, her Instagram perfect life collapsing.
The door closed.
Silence filled the shop.
Elena exhaled.
They're really gone from here. Yes, still in your house but not for long. I put my hand on her shoulder.
You did it, we did it.
She corrected, then smiled, genuine, the first since David died. Did you see Liam's face when Alan said 47,000? Like he'd been hit with a brick. We laughed. After months of tension, we laughed in the flower shop that was finally truly hers again. September 30th, Alan sent the notice to terminate tenancy via certified mail. Under Oregon law, they were guests who'd overstayed their welcome. No lease, no rent payments, no legal right to remain in Elena's house, 30 days to leave. I expected resistance. Margaret didn't disappoint. October 1st, Elena's phone rang. I was with her at the shop, helping reorganize the office they'd locked her out of for months. Files everywhere, passwords changed back, finally restoring order. It's Margaret, Elena said, showing me the screen. Put it on speaker. Elena, Margaret's voice dripped with wounded dignity. I just received a horrible letter from your lawyer.
Eviction?
How could you do this to me? It's my house, Margaret. You need to leave. This was David's house. My son's house. You're throwing your dead husband's mother into the street. Have you no shame? Elena's hand trembled slightly. I put my hand over hers, steadying it.
She took a breath.
David's gone, Elena said, voice stronger than I expected. The house is mine. Dad gave it to me. You have 30 days to find somewhere else. We'll fight this. We have rights. We've been living there for months. That establishes tenancy. My lawyer says. I lean toward the phone. Actually, Margaret, it doesn't. Oregon law is very clear on this point. Without a written lease or rental agreement, without paying rent, you're guests, and guests can be asked to leave at any time. Silence on the line, then George. Her voice turned poisonous. This is all you're doing, isn't it? You're destroying this family, turning my own daughter-in-law against me. I'm protecting my daughter from people who've been stealing from her for 6 months. There's a big difference. She hung up hard enough that the phone made a sharp sound through the speaker. That went well, Elena said with a shaky laugh. 3 days later, Alan called me. Margaret hired an attorney, Donald Mercer, bottom-tier estate lawyer, probably charging her $200 an hour to tell her exactly what she wants to hear, which is that they have implied tenancy based on oral agreements and established residency. It won't work. Oregon courts absolutely require written leases for tenancy rights, but he'll drag it out, bill her for consultations, maybe file a nuisance motion or 2. How long can they delay the inevitable? Maybe 2 weeks maximum. Then a judge looks at the complete lack of evidence and rules for Elena. 2 weeks. The Harpers were buying time, probably hoping we'd panic and negotiate. They didn't understand that negotiation requires leverage, and theirs had completely evaporated. October 7th. They still hadn't moved a single box. Time for the next move. I hired Mark Sullivan, a property assessor I'd worked with years ago when I was auditing real estate holdings for clients. He met me at Elena's house while the Harpers were out. Quentin had confirmed they'd gone to meet with their overpriced lawyer. Mark walked through the house methodically with his camera and clipboard, documenting everything. The master bedroom looked like a hotel room after a rock band had stayed there for a month. Stains on the carpet, burns on the dresser where someone had carelessly set down hot items. The bathroom mirror had a crack running through it. Master bedroom carpet needs complete replacing, Mark said, writing carefully, estimate $1,800. Dresser damaged beyond repair, $900. Bathroom mirror, $300 to replace. Living room, dark red wine stains on Elena's cream-colored sofa. Coffee rings permanently marking the antique end tables she'd inherited from her grandmother. Sofa needs professional cleaning or replacement, $1,200. End tables require professional refinishing, $800 minimum. The kitchen was somehow even worse. Grease splattered on walls they'd apparently never bothered to clean, a broken cabinet handle, scorch marks on the beautiful granite counter. By the time Mark finished his thorough inspection, the total damage was $8,700. I'll have the official written report by tomorrow morning, he said, closing his folder, complete with photos, itemized damages, and contractor estimates for every repair. Perfect, send it directly to Alan Foster's office. That same evening, Alan filed a civil claim for property damage. The Harpers didn't just need to leave, they now owed Elena substantial money for what they destroyed. If they refused to pay, we'd get a court judgment and start garnishing whatever assets they had left. The Lexus, designer handbags, whatever they'd managed to buy with Elena's money. October 10th, Quentin sent me a video clip. Liam had shown up at the flower shop, pacing outside like he wanted to start something. Marcus, our security guard, stood firmly at the door. I was in my workshop when Elena called, voice tight, "Liam's here, he says he wants to talk to me, Marcus won't let him inside. I'm on my way, don't engage with him." I arrived in 15 minutes. Liam stood outside on the sidewalk, pacing like a caged animal. When he saw me climbing out of my car, his face darkened with barely contained rage. "This is between me and Elena," he said. "Everything involving my daughter is between you and me now," I said calmly, walking up to stand next to Marcus. "You've poisoned her against us, we helped her, we took care of her when she had nothing, you stole from her, there's a significant difference between those two things." His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Marcus stepped forward slightly, just a subtle reminder of his presence and capability. Liam noticed and backed up half a step despite himself. "We just want to talk, work something out like reasonable people, this is family business. Family doesn't steal, family doesn't exploit grief, family doesn't leave bruises." I pulled out my phone, opened a photo, the bruise on Elena's wrist from back in August, the day I discovered what was really happening. "I have this. I also have surveillance footage of you physically grabbing her arm when she dared to ask to see financial records. I have video recordings of you threatening her, multiple instances." His face went pale, then flushed red. That's not, you did all of it, and if you come anywhere near my daughter again, I'm filing an official harassment complaint with the police. That's criminal, Liam, not civil law, criminal charges. You want a criminal record? Because that's exactly what happens when you keep threatening people who have evidence against you. He opened his mouth, closed it. I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing his desperation and anger against the very real consequences I was laying out. "We have nowhere to go," he said finally, voice dropping to something almost pleading. "No money, no place to stay. That's not Elena's problem anymore. You had 6 months of completely free housing while you spent every dollar she earned. You should have been saving for your own place instead of buying Lexuses and designer handbags." I paused, letting that sink in. "You have until October 30th. After that specific date, the sheriff will personally escort you out and the property damage claim stands regardless. Either you pay it voluntarily or we get a judgment and take it from you. Mom's going to fight this. Let her fight. Every single day she fights costs her more in legal fees she can't afford. Donald Mercer's billing meter is running constantly. How much has she paid him already?" 2,000, 3 more. His jaw tightened, direct hit, eyes struck exactly where it hurt. "We're not the bad guys here," he said, but his voice had no conviction left in it. "No, you're just the thieves. I suppose there's a distinction in your mind." He stood there another long moment, visibly deflated, then turned and walked back to his car without another word. I watched him drive away, noting the slight swerve as anger made his driving reckless. "That was cold," Marcus observed quietly. "That was necessary." Inside the shop, Elena was shaking. "I've never seen you like that before." "Like what?" "Like you'd actually physically hurt him if he'd touched me." I looked at my daughter, still too thin, still recovering, but genuinely stronger every day. I wouldn't have hurt him physically, but I would have made absolutely certain he understood the consequences of trying. She hugged me tightly. "Thank you, for what?" For being scary when I needed you to be scary for me. I smiled despite everything. I spent 40 years making nervous executives sweat in corporate boardrooms. This is the exact same skill set, just much better applied. October 12th, Alan called with the news I'd been expecting. The judge reviewed Margaret's motion this morning, denied completely, no legal basis whatsoever. They have until October 30th to vacate voluntarily or the county sheriff physically forces them out with a formal eviction, and the property damage claim still officially pending, but with all the documentation Mark provided, it's absolutely solid. They'll owe every penny whether they contest it or not. The evidence is overwhelming. The pieces were falling into place exactly where I'd carefully placed them. The Harpers were completely cornered now. No business access, no free housing, facing multiple financial demands. They had absolutely no way to meet. But I still wasn't quite done yet. October 13th, I met with Patricia Chambers, a forensic accountant I'd worked with on previous corporate fraud cases. Mid-50s, sharp-eyed, the kind of professional who found discrepancies in spreadsheets the way some people found typos in novels. I need a complete forensic audit of this small business for March through September, I said, handing her Elena's detailed bank records and Liam's laughably pathetic financial report. Patricia scanned the documents quickly, her eyebrows rising higher. This report, this is seriously what they submitted as official accounting? That's exactly it. She laughed, a short, sharp sound of professional disbelief. I can have a preliminary analysis ready in 3 days, full forensic report with documentation in 1 week maximum. Do it, spare no detail. 3 days later, Patricia sent her preliminary findings via encrypted email. I read through them twice carefully, checking every number, following every paper trail she documented. It was somehow even worse than I had initially thought. Total misappropriated $47,300 exactly. Complete breakdown, personal restaurant dining $8,400, luxury vehicle purchase $30,500, clothing and accessories $4,200, spa treatments and entertainment $3,100, unexplained cash withdrawals with no business purpose whatsoever $2,800, miscellaneous personal purchases $1,300. Every single transaction meticulously documented, every false categorization exposed and highlighted, every lie in Liam's amateur report annotated with actual bank proof. Alan prepared the formal demand letter, $47,300 due within 45 days, pay in full or face immediate lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty and possible embezzlement charges. October 12th, the letter arrived at whatever temporary address the Harpers had given their lawyer. Margaret called Elena that same evening, her timing predictable. Elena and I were at her house, finally hers again now that the Harpers had been forced out, carefully assessing what needed to be replaced beyond what Mark had already documented. Margaret's voice came through the phone speaker, trembling dramatically. Elena, please, we desperately need to talk about this horrible demand letter. There's nothing to talk about, Margaret. You took $47,300 that wasn't yours, you need to return every penny of it. I don't have that kind of money, we spent it all, we genuinely thought we were properly managing the business. You thought you were stealing from me while I grieved. I smiled slightly. Elena's voice had absolutely none of the hesitation, none of the guilt-induced compliance I'd heard back in August. She'd finally found her backbone again. I'm David's mother. Margaret's voice rose to near hysteria. I was grieving too. I only ever wanted to help you. I loved my son. You wanted to help yourself to my money. That's what you actually wanted. Please, I'm begging you now, we can surely work out a reasonable payment plan, $1,000 a month. I can probably manage that amount. Elena looked at me questioningly. I shook my head firmly. No payment plan, Elena said clearly. Full amount immediately or we go to court. But that's impossible. We don't have. You told me back in June that if I didn't like how you were running my business, I should take you to court. Do you remember saying that? You said I couldn't possibly afford a lawyer. You said I'd just have to accept whatever you decided to do. Elena's voice turned to pure ice. Well, I found an excellent lawyer, and now you're the one who can't afford this fight. Margaret's tone shifted dramatically. The wounded mother act disappeared completely, replaced by something much uglier underneath. You're making a terrible mistake right now. David would be absolutely ashamed of you treating his mother this way. David loved me deeply. He would have wanted me to be happy and successful. You just wanted my money for yourself. What about family loyalty? What about honoring the dead properly? You're not my family anymore, Margaret. You permanently lost that right when you physically grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave a bruise, when you locked me out of my own office, when you forced me to work 12-hour days completely unpaid while you spent every cent of my profits on yourselves. I'll tell everyone what you've done. Everyone in this city will know you threw your poor grieving mother-in-law out into the street. Go ahead and tell everyone, please do. I have 6 complete months of bank records showing exactly where every dollar went. I have a professional forensic audit from a certified accountant. I have a fraudulent financial report with your son's signature on it. Tell absolutely everyone. I genuinely love for people to know what you really are underneath. Complete silence on the line. Then Margaret hung up without another word. Elena sat down heavily on the repaired sofa. Did that really just happen? Did I actually say all that to her? You just won, I said firmly, completely and totally. She's going to keep fighting though, isn't she? She's certainly going to try, but she has literally no ammunition left. No money, no leverage, no legal ground whatsoever to stand on. She's finished. October 15th, Margaret's overpriced lawyer filed an official response to the civil claim, a desperate 30-page document that basically argued the Harpers had reasonably believed they were legally entitled to manage the business funds as they saw fit, and that any misuse was simply unintentional misunderstanding rather than deliberate fraud. Alan sent me a copy. I read it carefully in my workshop while sanding yet another new planter box for Elena's shop. This is pure desperation, Alan said over the phone, sounding almost amused. They're throwing absolutely everything at the wall and desperately hoping something, anything, will stick. Will any of it actually work? Not even a remote chance. Intent doesn't matter at all in breach of fiduciary duty cases. They had clear legal obligations. They failed to meet those obligations. They misappropriated funds. That's the entire case. The evidence is overwhelming. So what happens now in the process? We file for summary judgment. With Patricia's complete forensic report, the obviously fraudulent accounting Liam submitted, and 6 months of detailed bank records, there's absolutely no factual dispute possible. The judge will rule in our favor without even requiring a full trial.
What's the timeline?
Hearing scheduled in 2 weeks. Judgment will probably come about a week after that. Then they have exactly 90 days to pay in full, or we start legally seizing whatever assets they have left. I ran my hand over the smooth wood, feeling the grain. Everything was proceeding exactly as I'd planned from the beginning. The Harpers had made their choices: steal, lie, manipulate. Now they were facing the inevitable consequences. But I knew Margaret's personality. She absolutely wouldn't accept defeat quietly. October 18th. She proved me right yet again. Elena called, voice tight with stress. Dad, Margaret posted something on Facebook. People are commenting on it. Some of them are saying absolutely terrible things about me. I pulled up Facebook on my laptop. Margaret's post was public, written in the wounded victim tone she'd perfected over months. After my beloved son's tragic death, I moved to Portland specifically to support his grieving widow. For 8 long months, I've poured my heart and soul into helping her maintain the business her father gave her. Now, she's cruelly throwing me out of my son's home, the home where I still feel his precious presence every day. She's falsely accusing me of theft. She's turned my own family against me. This is how she honors David's memory, by destroying his mother. Comments ranged from genuinely supportive to absolutely vicious. People who didn't know any of the full story. People who only saw a grieving mother being mistreated by her ungrateful daughter-in-law. People calling Elena selfish, ungrateful, heartless, cruel. I watched Elena's hard-won confidence crack slightly, the old self-doubt creeping back in. Don't read those comments, I said firmly. We're going to handle this situation completely differently.
How?
By telling the absolute truth to the people who actually matter to your business and life. I started making phone calls. Elena's regular customers, her flower vendors, the people who'd known her well before the Harpers arrived and during their takeover. By October 20th, I had 15 people confirmed for a special meeting at the shop. It was finally time to reveal absolutely everything. October 18th, 15 people gathered in Elena's blooms. I'd invited her most loyal customers, the ones who'd watched her build this business before David died, her flower suppliers, the baker from next door, the woman who ran the coffee shop across the street. Margaret's Facebook post glowed on my laptop screen, projected onto the wall. Her wounded victim narrative, the vicious comments from strangers. Thank you all for coming, I started. Some of you may have seen accusations online about my daughter. I want to show you the truth. I pulled up Patricia's forensic report. The numbers filled the screen. From March through September, $47,300 were taken from this business. Here's where it went. Click, bank statements appeared, highlighted transactions, $38,500 for Alexis, $4,200 at Michael Kors, $8,400 at restaurants. I let that sink in. While my daughter worked 12-hour days without pay, the Harper family spent her money on luxury items. Phyllis Miller, a regular customer for 3 years, leaned forward. I knew something was wrong. Elena used to smile when I came in, then she just looked scared. Because she was, I said quietly. I pulled up the next document. This is the power of attorney that Margaret Harper convinced Elena to sign while she was grieving, and this, I displayed Liam's pathetic financial report. This is what they submitted when legally required to provide accounting. Notice the date Lexus was purchased, matches transportation assets. The Michael Kors purchases are listed as marketing materials. Gary Thornton, who supplied our roses, shook his head. Margaret tried to demand wholesale discounts from me, said she was the new owner. I told her I only dealt with Elena. She got nasty about it.
Can I ask something?
This from Monica Chun, who owned the coffee shop. Why didn't Elena fight back sooner? Elena, sitting beside me, spoke. Her voice was steady now. Because I thought I deserved it. I was drowning in grief. When Margaret told me I'd signed away my rights, I believed her. When she said I was incompetent, I believed that too. She paused. My father showed me the documents, showed me I still owned everything, showed me they were thieves, not family. What happened to your wrist? Phyllis asked, pointing to the photo on screen. The bruise from August. Liam grabbed me when I asked to see the business account. Elena's voice didn't waver. That's when I learned what family really meant to them. Silence filled the shop. The kind of silence that hardens into something sharp. I'm asking you to do one thing, I said. If anyone asks you about that Facebook post, tell them what you know, tell them what you saw. The truth is simple. These people exploited a grieving widow, stole from her business and destroyed her home. Now they're facing consequences. They didn't just agree, they were angry. Over the next 3 days, Margaret's Facebook post transformed. Her supporters vanished, replaced by comments from people who actually knew what happened. I watched Elena cry in the back room while Margaret screamed at her about proper customer service. This woman was never a victim, Phyllis Miller. Margaret Harper demanded I give her store credit without receipts, claiming she managed the business. I refused. She threatened to report my business to the Better Business Bureau. She's a con artist, Gary Thornton. I saw Grace Harper brag on Instagram about her successful flower business while Elena worked in dirty clothes. Nothing about this family was genuine, Monica Chin. The narrative flipped completely. Margaret tried to delete the post, but screenshots had already spread. October 25th arrived, the deadline for the 47,300. Silence from the Harpers. October 26th, my workshop. I was sanding a new planter box when the door opened. Margaret stood there, no Lexus outside, it had been repossessed. She wore clothes I recognized from months ago, her hair needed dyeing, the polish was gone. George, her voice cracked, please, I need to talk to you. I didn't stop sanding, I'm listening. I can get 10,000, maybe 12, my sister might lend it to me. She stepped closer, I'm begging you, talk to Elena, tell her to accept partial payment, I'll pay the rest over time. No. Please, I'm David's mother, doesn't that mean anything? I set down the sandpaper and looked at her directly. You thought my daughter would be easy to break because grief made her weak. You thought an old man couldn't do anything about it. I picked up the planter box, examining the joints, but you forgot something. I spent decades finding people who steal and lie for a living, corporate executives who thought they were clever. They all made the same mistake you did, they underestimated the auditor. I made mistakes, but I'm not a criminal. You took 47,300 that wasn't yours, you filed false financial reports, you breached fiduciary duty. I set down the box. Those aren't mistakes, Margaret, that's theft, that's fraud. The difference between you and good criminals is that good criminals know when to stop. What do you want from me? Nothing, I want you to face what you did. I returned to my sanding. Alan files the lawsuit tomorrow, see you in court. She stood there deflated, then left without another word. October 27th, Alan filed the civil suit, court date November 2nd. November 2nd, I didn't attend, neither did Elena. Alan represented us with a briefcase full of evidence. Patricia's forensic report, bank statements, Liam's fraudulent accounting, damage assessments, surveillance footage. The Harpers showed up without a lawyer. Donald Mercer had dropped them when the evidence became overwhelming. The hearing lasted 90 minutes. Alan called me afterward, total victory. Judge reviewed the evidence, asked the Harpers if they disputed any facts. They couldn't. Margaret tried claiming emotional distress and grief. Judge shut it down, said fiduciary duty doesn't have an emotional exemption. Judgment 47,300 due within 90 days. If unpaid, we can seize assets, her jewelry, any vehicles, bank accounts, plus 5,400 in court costs, total 52,700, and restraining order granted. None of them can come within 100 feet of Elena or the shop. Violation means arrest. I smiled, perfect. November 15th, late afternoon, I delivered a finished planter box to Elena's blooms. The shop looked different, alive. 2 new employees worked the counter, Sarah and Miguel, both eager and well-trained. Fresh flowers filled every surface. Customers browsed happily. The cash register actually rang. Elena saw me and smiled. A real smile, not the broken thing I'd seen in August. Another masterpiece? She took the planter box, running her fingers over the smooth wood. Oak should last 20 years like the others. She set it on the counter. Dad, I want to show you something. She pulled up her laptop, the business account, revenue charts trending upward, expenses properly categorized, everything organized, professional, clean. We're on track for 9,200 this month. I hired an accountant to keep the books right. Sarah handles customers. Miguel does arrangements. I actually manage instead of just surviving. Proud of you. I got an email yesterday. She switched screens. From the Department of Revenue. The audits closed, no violations found. They noted significant improvement in record keeping under new management. I laughed. New management, that's one way to put it. The bell over the door chimed. We both looked. Margaret walking past outside on the sidewalk. She didn't look in. Her coat was old, worn at the elbows, no jewelry visible. She walked quickly, head down, heading toward the bus stop. Her Lexus got auctioned last week, Elena said quietly. Sold for $32,000, applied to the judgment. She still owes $20,700. She'll pay it or they'll take her jewelry next. Does it feel good watching her like this? I considered the question carefully. No, but it feels right. Justice isn't about feeling good, it's about balance. She took from you, now she pays back, that's how it works. Elena watched Margaret disappear around the corner. I don't hate her anymore, I just don't care. She's not in my life, she can't hurt me, that's enough, that's growth. She hugged me. Thank you for giving me my life back. I only showed you it was still yours. You did the hard part, taking it back. November 20th, the enforcement hearing. Margaret had missed the first payment deadline. Alan had filed for asset seizure. The judge wanted to hear her explanation. I attended this time. Elena came with me. We sat in the back of the courtroom. Margaret entered alone. No Liam, no Grace, no lawyer. She wore a cheap department store suit that didn't fit right. Her face was gaunt, makeup poorly applied. She looked 10 years older than 61. The judge reviewed the file. Ms. Harper, you owe the plaintiff $52,700 per the judgment dated November 2nd. You've made no payments, explain. Your Honor, I don't have that kind of money. Her voice was thin, defeated. I lost my car, I'm living with my sister. I can pay $100 a month. The judgment doesn't allow payment plans. You had 90 days to pay in full or negotiate before judgment. You chose neither. I'm trying. I can't get blood from a stone. Then we'll take the stone. The judge signed a document. Asset seizure approved. Sheriff will inventory and auction all non-exempt property. Ms. Harper, you have 48 hours to provide a complete list of assets or face contempt charges. Margaret's face crumbled. Not crying, something worse. The complete collapse of someone who'd run out of options. Her shoulders sagged, her hands trembled. This is cruel, she whispered. Oh, I'm David's mother. I loved my son. I was grieving. You were stealing, the judge said flatly. Grief doesn't give you license to commit fraud. This court enforces the law, not sympathy. 48 hours, dismissed. Margaret stood slowly like her bones hurt. She turned to leave and saw us in the back row. Our eyes met. I kept my expression neutral. Not gloating, not apologizing, just present. She looked away first and shuffled out. In the hallway, Alan caught up to us. The asset list will probably include her jewelry. She has about $18,400 worth, some furniture, maybe $8,000 total recovery. The rest will follow her through bankruptcy. Will she actually go bankrupt?
Elena asked.
Probably, and this judgment survives bankruptcy, so it'll follow her forever. Garnished wages, tax refund, seizures, she'll never be free of it. Elena nodded slowly. Good. We drove back to the shop. During the ride, Elena's phone buzzed. She checked it and laughed, sharp and unexpected. Grace's Instagram got deleted. Not just her posts, the whole account. Someone reported it as a scam business page. Shame, I said, not meaning it. Liam's working at a warehouse. His Facebook says he's a logistics coordinator. I checked the company. He loads trucks for $15 an hour. That's 15 more than he earned stealing from you.
True.
We pulled up to Elena's Blooms. The afternoon sun made the storefront glow. Through the window, I could see Sarah helping a customer with a bouquet, Miguel arranging roses in the back, the rhythm of a business running properly. Come inside, Elena said. I want to show you something. Inside, she led me to the office, the one they'd locked her out of for months. Now it was hers again. Organized files, clean desk, her name on a nameplate. She pulled out a framed document from her desk drawer. The deed to the shop, her name in bold letters, signed by me last February. I'm getting this professionally framed and hanging it behind the counter, she said, so I see it every day so I remember what's mine. Smart, and I'm changing the business structure. Sarah and Miguel will become partial owners after 1 year, 10% each. I want people invested in success, not just collecting paychecks. I smiled. You're thinking like a real business owner now. I am one. I forgot for a while, but I remember now. Miguel called from the front. Elena, the Portland Garden Club called. They want to discuss a partnership for their spring gala. Be right there. She turned back to me. Major clients are coming back. They heard what happened. They want to support me. They want to support quality work. You're providing that. She hugged me again. I know I keep saying this, but thank you for everything. You'd have figured it out eventually, maybe, but you made sure I didn't have to wait. You made sure they couldn't keep hurting me. I pulled back and looked at her. Really looked. The dark circles were gone. The defeated posture was gone. The fear was gone. In its place stood the daughter I remembered. Strong, capable, ready. You're going to be fine, I said. I know. I left her to her work and drove home through Portland's early evening traffic. My phone sat silent. No crisis calls, no emergency meetings, no battles to fight. The story was over. The theft had been exposed, prosecuted, punished. The victim had become the victor. The criminals faced their consequences. Justice, as it turned out, wasn't complicated, it just required patience, documentation, and the willingness to see things through to the end. I'd given my daughter a flower shop, she'd lost it to thieves, and together we'd taken it back. That was enough.